Hello and welcome to Backstage with Gig Performer. My name is Brett Pontecorvo, and we are here every Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, talking with folks who are using Gig Performer on a pro level, doing some things that are admirable. And today, of course, is no exception. We've got some amazing folks coming back on from Prestige Sound to talk about how they're powering their live sound with Gig Performer, alongside, of course, a full mixing desk and all of that stuff. But do let us know if you are watching right now where you're tuning in from. As we were getting ready today, trying to figure out what the question of the day should actually be, I realized that we had a bit of an oversight in what we were doing, and so I changed our question. The question of the day is Master Bus spelled bus with one S or bus with two S's? There's some disagreement about this. I'm curious what you guys think. I don't know if there actually is a right or wrong answer, but do let us know that in the comments. We've got Nemanja. Thank you so much for being here, Nemanja. Elkane from the Netherlands. Thanks for being on today. While you guys are thinking about the proper spelling of Master Bus, I want to give you a heads up about some awesome things that are coming. First off, next week we have special guest Igor Paspalj. If you want to know how he got this good at playing guitar, it was definitely by practicing laying in bags of coffee. But he's amazing, a very fast guitar player, very musical, and has made some videos for us. He's going to be coming on to talk about his workflows, how he's using Gig Performer to power his live sounds, answering your guitar-related questions. It's going to be a great stream. We've got everything all set up and ready to go, so do make sure you're here next week for that. It's going to be a real treat of a live stream. Additionally, the following week, we've got Christian Seidschlag. You guys can all correct my German if I've got that one correct. But he is the man behind DDMF, Fine Audio Software, and he makes a multitude of fantastic audio tools, but he is actually one of our Gig Performer partners. So if you are using Pro Tools and you would like to record your Gig Performer output into Pro Tools, he's made a wonderful wrapper device that will allow you to wrap GP Relayer to record your outputs. And if you are a current Gig Performer license holder, you can go to the description right now. We've got a little link there. We'll take you to our partners page, and you can purchase this tool for a 10% discount. And of course, the same goes if you own DDFM and would like to purchase Gig Performer. You can do the same through our partners page. So do check that out as well. Okay, but today's guest, as I'm talking through all of this, is Jose Pedro of Prestige Sound. And Jose Pedro is using Gig Performer alongside his regular mixing desk to enhance his live sound. He works regularly with Dave Phillips, who was recently on Backstage, as well as with Alistair Begg. And at the end of the stream, I'll make sure I link those episodes as well. He's going to talk us through all of these awesome flashing lights and things that he's using here in a second. And we also have Dave Phillips joining us as well. So we'll get a full picture of really what's happening. So without further ado, I would love to welcome on JP and Dave Phillips. How's it going, guys?
Hello. Afternoon.
Thanks for being here. All right, I've got one comment so far on our bus versus bus dilemma, and it seems bus is more common, but fancy mixing boards from Europe call it a bus with two S. I'm going to need some citations on this, but allegedly this is a thing. And I've always used two S's, so we'll see. Howdy from Windy City. Well, thank you guys for being here. It's a real honor.
Thank you.
JP, I know this is your first time on. Dave, you're back again. Thank you for a second time through. For folks who don't understand, what is Prestige Sound? JP, maybe you can give us your iteration of what you think Prestige Sound is, and what exactly it is that you guys do.
Right. So Prestige is an audio provider, as in front of house live shows. Mm-hmm. And the thing I would say that Prestige is different from most of the other companies is that we care about the production and what the band needs, as in musically speaking. We are all musicians, so we know how what it is to be on the other side, you know.
Wow.
And the attention to the detail, especially when it comes to the effects of what the band needs or is trying to replicate. This is the kind of thing that Prestige goes to long run and does. You know.
Wow. That's very eloquently put, JP. So just you guys and Dave,
Thank you.
at what point in the journey did you and JP start working together? Was it early days or? Oh, Dave, your audio is gone.
I was being good and making sure I was muted during your intro.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
So let's do all the. Thanks for asking me. It's lovely to be back. I'm really grateful for you asking me
Yeah,
to come back. It's been
of course.
the last time was so much fun. I don't know what did I tell you the story about how I set Prestige up?
Yes.
Um,
I think you may
last
have
time I was
mentioned that you
here.
basically needed somebody to run sound and there was no one. So you built a company.
Yeah, yeah, cool. So we built a company, and I brought on an engineer right at the beginning, and the plan was that the engineer would run the show because
Mhm.
I run two and a half shows now plus teaching at the time
Mhm.
and a studio, and I didn't want all of the extra responsibility of having to run a PA company as well. And but the engineer he didn't really work out, so I put up another ad as well, and JP was a local engineer um, who applied for the job, and just chatting to him was a joy.
Mhm.
Do the Zoom interview initially, and you can tell when an engineer has a passion for what they're doing, and knows what they're talking about in the way that they describe their processes.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I love to do when I'm qualifying engineers is just having a discussion about the gear,
Mhm.
because it I think to be able to get the best out of this job and to be able to produce the best products that we do as audio engineers is to really understand and love the processes.
Mhm.
So, to be able to have a conversation with somebody in depth about, how compression works and what different types of compression to use and when you'd apply certain things and how, an 1176 may be better than an LA3A in some circumstances, and you kind of go into the technical detail of what the compressor does and some of the sonic effects that it's producing as well.
Mhm.
Not everybody does that.
Mhm.
Um, and you can really tell passionate engineers, and
Mhm.
that's what I wanted when I was looking for engineers to work with me is passionate guys, not just guys that are looking for just go and mix a band, do a basic job, and then collect a paycheck at the end of it. I wanted somebody who really cared about what they do,
Yep.
and was an incredible find.
Uh,
It's really valuable member of our team, not just from the prestige point of view, but also the band point of view as well. The guys just don't want to do gigs without him.
well, and JP, how long were you mixing before you joined Prestige Sound?
So you mean live mixing?
Yes. Anything.
Okay.
Maybe both.
Um, so roughly about 2013,
Okay.
where I started digging into production on the studio side.
Okay.
I went to study on the school, and that's where I had my first opportunity to mix in a live show, a
Mhm.
three-piece band, really good musicians. I thought, well, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, but I've never done any more live mix until about 2015, where I did about 4 or 5 shows. It's like, yeah, still pretty cool, but not sure if I want to do this.
Mhm.
And then 2016, I moved to the UK. Kept working on studio stuff until I met Dave right after COVID.
Mm.
So that's when I start mixing it. When Dave asked me to start mixing, that's when my thing as an audio engineer, front of house audio engineer, actually started. All my background comes from the studio, not from the live.
Okay. So many dots are being filled in for me. I love everything about this.
Yeah.
So I originally decided I wanted to ask you when you started incorporating plugins into your live sound setup, but it sounds more like you actually started incorporating live sound into your plugin setup.
Yeah.
Right.
That's kind of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So
when I started, yeah. Sorry.
no, go ahead.
Dave
Yeah.
was already using plugins. Yeah, Dave was already using plugins.
Mm-hmm.
Because they let's say that the effects from the desk are not as flexible as we need them. Let's put it like that.
When you
So in
say
a
as
way,
you
I
need
start
them,
using plugins.
when you
Exactly.
when you say as
So
you need
they
them,
they are not too.
is it because
Sorry.
you're caring so much about what
Yeah.
the band and the
Yeah.
audience
Exactly.
hears?
Exactly.
Okay, keep going.
They do the job, but when you're working, especially with the kind of work we do, tribute bands, you you don't usually need a general sound. You sometimes need a very specific sound, and the desk just doesn't cut it,
Mm-hmm.
and
Okay.
that's why we're using plugins for that. Yeah.
We should point out that we're using the Persona Studio Live system.
Okay.
And so, and I know you've had some front of house guys on before that are using kind of larger concert touring stuff. You know, we're working at kind of theater level with, I'm not gonna say it's entry level stuff, but it's more simpler desks than you know, say your Digicos and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the effects that Personas give us, specifically in the reverbs, quite honestly, they just they're not very nice. They're not very vibey. They're not very pretty. So the initial plan with incorporating good quality time-based effects into the desk was because of that, because the persona stuff just isn't that nice. You know, and coming from, and I've used the Allen and Heath SQ stuff before, which is really nice. The Behringer X32 for all of its you know, the varying opinions on that board. The effects that they bundle with that, fantastic as well. And it's the Studio Live just doesn't cut it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where the want for using plugins comes into. And you know what JP is able to get out of that board with Gig Performer. It's incredible. And we're not in the position, unfortunately, to be able to spend 10, 15 grand on a Waves Grid system,
Sure.
you know, which most would. And this has been, I mean, we've done something like 150 shows, I think, maybe close to 200 shows with this setup. And definitely sort of 70 of those this year with Gig Performer. And it's been super smooth. You know, that I haven't found a reason yet to spend all of that extra money on getting a Waves Grid system, unless I wanted to incorporate all of the plugins into the channel strips anyway. Um, but you know, the feedback that we get from the band is great. The feedback that we get from the audience is great. We're happy with the front of house sound. And until something breaks, we're probably unlikely to change it.
Absolutely. That makes a ton of sense. So, what were you using before Gig Performer, and why did you switch?
Is that for me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when I started, Dave was using Logic,
Okay.
and me being a Logic user, I said, okay, cool, let's keep using it, and it worked okay for the most part. But Logic isn't really built for live sound engineers, more for studio. So we would occasionally have crashes,
Mm-hmm.
and when I say occasionally, ever about 4 or 5 times a month. And some of those
That's a lot of
crashes
times.
would also crash the desk. Yeah, the crashes would crash the desk, and more often would need to reboot everything. And also, if the band decided to change the set list, I was using the set list with Marcus, so I had to copy my entire automation of the plugins, drag open the space between. So that was very tiresome. Took too much time, and I couldn't customize my layout. I
Right.
had to work with what Logic offered, and I had to do it. When we found out about Gig Performer, thanks to Alistair Begg, because
Yes.
he just said, "Oh, you have to try Gig Performer. You have to try Gig Performer." So all right, I'll give it a go.
Alice
When I
is a very
tried that,
successful salesman.
Yes.
yes, he is. Um, I realized that I could customize it in the way that made sense for me, have everything I needed in front of me. And as I worked with that, with Gig Performer, I realized that there were no crashes.
Well.
The system was absolutely stable. The CPU was more happy with me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if I needed to change something on the set list, all I have to do is click on the Rackspace, drag it to wherever I want it. Done.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Gig Performer is just absolutely awesome.
I love it. I love it. So the switch was a stability switch. You know, the sound that
Yes,
Logic was
in a way,
producing
yes.
was good to your ears, but it just wasn't cutting it for live performance.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Exactly. Stability, customization, and all of that. Yeah.
Makes sense. So let's I'm gonna share your screen here a little bit, and maybe you can explain what you're doing with Gig Performer and also why it matters. Because I know folks.
Okay.
I think from what I understand, you're trying to get a more vibey sound. Like you want people to listen to what's happening and feel like, oh yeah, this sounds like the record, which requires something a bit
closer,
more specific.
Yeah,
exactly. But okay, so I can see your setup here, and what are we looking at?
Right. So this is the instance I used to run the effects.
Okay.
In this case, is to run the effects of the band Seriously Collins.
Okay.
So when I started setting up Gig Performer, I did what usually people do: go to create a Rackspace, load all the plugins, and whenever I was happy with I have, then duplicated all the Rackspaces.
Mm-hmm.
But that taxed it a lot on my RAM. It was about almost 8 GB of RAM.
Wow. Okay.
So I moved everything to the global Rackspace.
Okay.
Let me show you that to you in a second.
Mm-hmm.
There it is. So essentially what I have is Rackspaces that control the level of send from each track I'm sending from the desk via USB to each reverb. In this case, let's say this is all about the kick.
Mm-hmm.
These are the snares and so on, right?
Okay. Yep.
By doing this, moving everything to the global Rackspace, this I was taking about 1 GB of RAM.
Wow.
So this became very efficient.
Yes.
But then I needed to be able to change the amount of sends.
Okay.
From
and
song
why did
to
you
song.
need to be able to do that?
Well, let's say that let's think about In the Air Tonight requires a different gated reverb, whereas One More Night requires a plate reverb. So I needed to have that change from song to song.
Yep.
So what I ended up doing was assigning each knob. Oh, sorry.
I lost your screen share. Just I think it's taking a moment to catch up. I'll tell you when it comes back on the screen, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Okay.
It's coming.
Is it?
There we go. I can see you now. Okay, so this is I can see your wiring.
Yeah, but not the wiring just yet.
Okay.
So what I did on the knobs was assigning them the global parameters. So each knob and fader is assigned to a global parameter, and then going to my Rackspace where I have my set list, I can do the adjustments of the sends song by song.
Okay, your screen disappeared again. Hold on, right where you are. I think when it updates the screen. Okay, so I see it now. So you've got
takes a little bit. Okay.
Your set lists over here. I see.
Yes.
Okay.
And so depending on the song, you will see that each send, the amount of sends change slightly, even from song or section, song to song.
It's disappeared again. Okay, we're back.
Yeah.
So
it's
can you
low.
just mouse over where those
All right.
sends are? Just so I can see.
So on the pink panel,
Yep.
these are all vocals.
Gotcha. Yep, I see. The
So
Vox
back vocals
delay.
and lead vocal.
Yep.
Hmm.
So
I
this
think
gives you
it's
the
the
flex.
Mac struggling with all the processes.
Yeah, it's my Mac struggling. Yeah.
Ecamm Live just usually shuts down. It seems like Zoom is just like, I'm gonna hold the audio and cut everything else out. So it looks like as you move through, all of those widgets on the pink panels are adjusting to give you the result that you want. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Not only the pink, but on the brown, which are the instruments. Yes. Everything is adjusted. The amount of sends depends on which song we have.
Gotcha.
And this
Gotcha.
this is very cool because I can have the exact reverb I want on the exact amount I want for each reverb for each song.
And this is profound from like a level of tribute bands, because you're able to reproduce with significantly more accuracy the sound that you want to get for the people experiencing the show.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Oh, is it not working? Oh, there it is.
Which,
So,
yeah, makes a big difference. And just like drawing it back to the beginning as well, you as a company seem to have more of an eye towards the overall experience. So both the experience of the musicians who are playing, as well as the actual experience of sitting in the audience delivering something that feels authentic. So it kind of makes sense to me why you guys are kind of positioning yourselves differently, not just like, hey, I'm gonna run your sound and turn everything on, but it's more like a show production framework. Like you're producing some experience for folks to really step into. Would you say that's correct?
yes, essentially that's all about the experiencing, the experience. The audience gets there and they experience the sound as close or the same as possible. The sound they actually know. In this case, Phil Collins. There's the staple in that sound, especially the gated reverbs and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely iconic. Absolutely iconic,
yeah,
for sure.
Exactly.
And can I jump in as well?
Please.
Of course you can.
From a musician's perspective as well as a fan's perspective, I'm on stage playing keyboards while JP's doing the front of house sound. And what's kind of unique from our company's perspective is that you've got the owner of the company actually in the band using the product that I'm selling, essentially. So from my perspective as somebody who really loves the music, and I've spent a lot of time, we discussed when I was on before, I spent a lot of time working on the arrangements and the sounds for the show, and all of the other guys do as well. If you're doing this thing well, you want to give the audience the experience that they're expecting when they go and listen to a tribute show, and that is from my perspective, I want to go and hear the music the way that I love it. So if all of the musicians are working on the parts in the way that they're supposed to be, which is learning them, I'm going to say 95% accuracy. It's nice to be able to put in a little bit of your own flair every so often. So that what the audience is receiving is accurate in terms of how they know the arrangements for the songs. The effects are the same as well. Your drum reverbs are the same, and your vocal modulations and those delay throws that you expect, and maybe you don't necessarily realize that you're listening to them as a regular consumer when you're listening to the record, and you may notice that something is kind of off when you don't receive them when you go and see the show. So the mix that I have in my IEMs is pretty much as close to the records as I can get them. Because I want to
Yes.
be at the gig as well as play the gig. So I'm
Absolutely.
listening to it as much as playing it. And when we go and do shows with in festivals, for example, with venue, the front of house engineers of festivals, where it's just not possible to bring JP in this level of technicality. I'm having to suffer through dry mixes, unbalanced mixes. I don't get the effects levels that I want. I don't get the effects that I want, really. And I just don't enjoy the show, you know? And, the front of house guys do a fine job. And Chris, who fronts the band, does a fantastic job. And the guys on the stage do a fantastic job of giving a fantastic show. But it's just missing that little, as the French say, I don't know what, at at the top, just to give that last level of polish on the top of the sound. And that's a shame for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm like getting so much clarity talking to both of you guys at the same time. JP, are you with those widgets just adjusting the volumes of those different mixers? It looks like you've kind of got things stacked here. So is it just like a matter of muting and unmuting the different things? Is that how you're dealing with?
Not really.
Okay.
From song to song, what I'm changing is the amount that is sent
Gotcha.
to each reverb.
Gotcha.
Let's see if the screen allows it.
Right now,
I'm also
it's gone. Okay, it's back now.
scared. Oh. There it goes. Ooh, it's
Okay,
very slow.
I see it.
I'm also from song to song, if needs to be, I'm also changing the parameters of the reverbs and the delays, especially if it's a delay with the tempo. I might be changing the time signature or the character of the reverb to match the song, and I have all the widgets as soon as Zoom allows it.
Yep, it's coming back. I see it.
There
So
it
where
is.
it says smooth or pre-delay, like you're adjusting those things.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And
this,
that is changed. It can be changed song by song if I want to, which I usually do.
okay. So this brings me to my next question, which is, how are you controlling those global widgets from the local Rackspaces? Or are you doing it in setlist views?
No, I'm using the panels, the rack panels. I'm not using the set list. So essentially all these panels are copied to the rack space. See if it lets me. And they are all assigned by the global parameters.
Yes.
To the knobs on the rack space. Let's see if it shows.
It's taking a second. I see all darkness.
Eventually.
We're back now.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
we're
Okay.
gone now.
There we are. So no. Oh God.
Hold on.
There it is.
It's coming. I see it now.
And so yay. And so depending on what I want on any song I want, I can adjust all the parameters, and I do it all from the rack space.
Yep. Okay. So
I don't use the set list. I thought about that, but doesn't really make sense to me. All I'm using changing rack space to rack space, and each rack space is a song.
Yep. And so for folks who maybe don't understand what a global parameter number is, there is a spot inside your global rack space which allows you to assign a number to a widget. So when you bring these widgets into the local rack space, you're not actually adding more plugins. You're just controlling widgets in the global. So you can have, it almost feels like snapshots of your global rack space per section. Okay, here's a question I want to know. How much extra setup time does using Gig Performer cost you when you're doing a show?
0.
All right. Well, there you go.
It's very quick. It's everything loads pretty quick, and
okay. And are you running,
no extra time needed.
Are you running a like how are you getting Gig Performer connected to your board, or is it not connected to your board at all?
Yes, it is. So the desk we use, the PreSonus Studio Live 64S,
Mm-hmm.
works as an audio interface.
Gotcha.
And so it is connected via USB
Okay.
to my laptop.
Okay.
And so I assign the tracks I want to send on USB, and then Gig Performer sees the desk as an audio interface, and then do all the routing, and then select the outputs I need to, and then send them back to the desk.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
pretty straightforward.
See, that to me, when I hear that, I'm like, that makes so much sense, because now Gig Performer is able to actually identify what's going on with the audio, as opposed to just having a separate interface with way too many channels. Although I guess you could send it over Ethernet at this point, but that's fascinating. Okay. So how are you controlling Gig Performer when you are running? Do you click through, or do you have a device you like to use to move through your Rackspaces?
No. In every song I have the top panel
Okay.
where I have 4 widgets,
Mm-hmm.
and one says previous song, next song, and then previous section, next section. And that's where I'm clicking, just using my mouse.
Gotcha.
And let's say each song is a Rackspace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I have the sections right here. The variations are sections, say verses, chorus, pre-chorus.
Yep.
And all I have to do is just use this button. I'll eventually integrate the Elgato, the Stream Deck,
Okay. Yep.
to do this. But for now, it's just because Gig Performer has the extension now, which is
Yes.
awesome.
It's so good. I use it all the time.
Yeah.
It just now that it's built in. Before it was built in, I was like using a MIDI thing to build it, but having it built in is just it's so nice.
Yeah, that extension was what convinced me to actually do this on the Elgato, on the Stream Deck. So kudos.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay, so let's talk about what plugins are you using and why. I know for Seriously Collins, you're dealing with some super like stylistic things that are, I would say, pretty unique. So what did you choose to use and why?
Well, it took me a while to find out exactly what Phil Collins used. I mean, we all know that the gated reverb sound came from one of the tests, one of the recording they were doing, and then eventually the talkback mic was on, and they were like, "Oh, what's that?" And then that eventually was replicated in a unit. I remember was an AMS something. So if I go here, I'm using the Wave Alchemy Glow.
It's loading. I'm gonna let it.
Yes, it's
okay. The
loading,
window is not up yet, but I'm sure it will come soon. The VST is open on your computer.
Yeah, there it is.
There it is. Nice. Okay, so
So
who created
this one was by, sorry, Wave Alchemy.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Wave Alchemy is the one that does glow. And this for the gated reverb, this is my go-to because it's an almost the exact sound of it when it's used right.
I love that. You can always
Then
tell.
I also use.
You can always tell when somebody has like done something for a long time when they're like, "Oh, this tool is amazing. It's so good. It's the best."
Yeah.
When you use it right.
Yeah, exactly. That's the key. That's the key. Yeah, finding the exact gate time is paramount to get the exact attack and tail of that song.
And how did you go about
then
finding
I
those
use
numbers?
another stuff. Well, just just playing back the tracks, because the desk has the ability to record the show, and then sending to Gig Performer and then adjusting it and say, okay, so this is where the gauge should be, and that's it.
Awesome. So it's
tuned
a
by
bit of
ear.
intentional trial and error.
It's a vibe based approach rather than mathematically working out the BPM to millisecond values.
Got
And
it.
it's yeah, and it absolutely. As I said, I listen to this stuff every show, and it just absolutely hits me in that it's just the way that I want it to sound as a fan, and yeah, all the hard work was worth it.
Yep. I love that. Okay, what else are you using? So we've got that for your gated reverb.
Yeah.
What else is going on?
And then for the most part, I'm using one of the Wave Alchemy replica of the MT250, because I love that song. I love that sound. It's loading.
It's the prettiest of the EMT plates.
Yeah. Dawn.
It is really beautiful.
Yeah. I love this plugin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also using their replica of the AMT 140. It's called Radiance.
Okay.
Especially for the ballads. It's just beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how did you go about discovering these? Were you just a Waves user, so you kind of knew they existed, or was there some research behind selecting these?
Well, this is Wave Alchemy, not Waves.
Gotcha.
No, it was a search. I went to find out which plugins or which reverb Phil Collins was using, and the AMS RMX 16, I think that's the name. And then I tried to find whichever plugin was replicating it. So it was, just a hit and miss or a luck chance. It was actually research and lots of research and finding the plugins that would do that sound.
Got it.
Yep.
Got it. Fantastic. Okay, what else is being used here?
So then I'm using the Waves H delay, which is fairly common, just because I like how it sounds. It's easy. I can use the tap if I want to assign it to BPM.
It's loading.
And I'm
It'll
also
come
using
soon.
the
Hold
Waves.
on.
Yeah.
It's loading. It'll be.
Right.
I see it now.
All right. And I'm also using the Waves doubler because of the pitch shifting thing that in some older recordings Phil Collins has in his voice. Well, replicating it with the doubler. It's not the most accurate one, but it's pretty close. Yeah. And that's it for the effects. I use all these reverbs, delays, and modulation for all the for all the instruments. Different instances of the reverbs. So I'm using some reverbs for the drums, and then other repeated plugins for the instruments, repeated plugins for the vocals, and so on and so on.
So, you guys do a variety of shows. I know you work with, there were a handful of bands specifically. Do you bring Gig Performer every time you run sound? And if so, do you have to make alterations to make sound appropriate for not the Seriously Collins tribute band?
Well, if I'm doing the shows that we do with Seriously Collins, DSUK, and 50 Years of Fender, yes, I'll always bring the Gig Performer with me. All the show is programmed, all the effects are tuned for what's needed. If I'm doing another band for some reason, they've asked me to do another band, and it's a one-off show, it's very likely that I will not bring Gig Performer with me, at least not for now, because this takes a little bit to program.
Right. I was listening to you talk and I was like, oh, this is really like well thought out. But then of course in the back of my head I'm going, but if you had all of your, generic good sounding reverbs and your generic good sounding things and you had a couple of knobs and you mapped some things this way, then you could probably
That's why I said for now.
For now.
That's why I said for now.
For now. I love it. Okay, well, folks who are watching, if you have questions for JP, go ahead and pop them in, and I'm sure he'd be happy to answer them. Okay, let's talk about the I don't know, infamous conversation of latency in using computers to process your audio. How do you think about latency as a live sound engineer? How are you dealing with mitigating latency problems as you're having these plugins? And do you find it to be a hindrance? Have you done anything to combat that? I guess those were a lot of questions, but
No,
let
it's
me know
okay.
your thoughts.
Yeah. So first thing is that all the plugins I'm using, because all the plugins I'm using, Gig Performer reports 0.0 milliseconds of latency, and that was paramount. I didn't want the plugins to add any unnecessary latency. To be honest, I think I can't remember which one, but it was about 3 milliseconds round trips when using Gig Performer with the desk, and I don't really notice the latency. People don't really notice the latency, so looks
Mm.
like I did the job well done, bringing the
It,
latency to a minimum.
Yeah.
it
Well,
might be
Always
worth
try.
it might be worth
Yeah,
mentioning that the sounds, the sources are being stolen at the input level,
yeah,
aren't they? So rather than you take them into the desk and then you send them out of Ascend, do all the processing and then bring them back in, which is a traditional effects workflow, the the fact that it's a USB interface means that you can just steal each of the sound sources literally at their input, do all of the processing, do all of the sending to each of the individual units, and then route them back to the effects returns. So that actually helps to mitigate a lot of what any latency that the desk could actually bring in. And I think it's running at 48K. Am I right?
yeah, yes,
So,
indeed.
and
For the
that's the
okay.
most that the desk can handle in terms of sample rate. So, if we were running at 96, you'd be able to get slightly lower latency. But the fact that we're not experiencing it anyway is it doesn't really matter.
okay. I see that. So that's actually key that you're stealing it. So your board receives processed sound. Like when the audio comes back into your mixing board, it's already been processed in Gig Performer. Is that correct?
Well, the effects, yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
So
exactly.
so
It it
how does that affect how you deal with those sounds coming through? Because and I don't run front of house sound, but I assume there's a workflow that you use to deal with a signal that's not at all processed. But now you have
yeah,
processed signal coming into your board. Are you just not touching it at all? Do you have to take other precautions to deal with those effects on the front end? Or what do you do differently?
When it comes to effects like reverbs, delays, modulation, it doesn't really matter because uh, we still have the direct sounds, so it doesn't really matter. I don't have to worry about that. But the second instance I'm running, which is to process the master bus, that required a workaround so that the direct signal wouldn't affect what I have from the master bus processing.
Okay, so what did you
Right.
do? Can you show us
Okay.
that?
So yeah.
Do you need to change how you're
Uh,
sharing your
mm,
screen?
uh, I mean, I can show the master bus, but that routing I need to say. So essentially, I'm sending all the there it is, all the tracks to a matrix on the desk, and then from that matrix, that is sent via digital on USB to Gig Performer to this instance. And then from here on, it outputs to another channel on the desk. and then that channel goes straight to the desk output, and that's how I do it. Because all the direct sound from the channels, I think it adds about 2 milliseconds, maybe not even that. It's a small amount of it, but it's not enough would upset anyone.
Are you in large enough spaces that you're also dealing with significant latency in the room? Like people are far enough away from the stage that it looks weird because there's 20
No,
milliseconds of stage latency. You're not in large enough.
no,
Okay.
not really, no.
Okay. Okay. Very interesting. So why did you need to use a separate instance for the master bus?
Right. Yeah, that's a very interesting one. So when I did the my effects instance, I decided, well, I would love to process the master bus. So I added the plugins, and my CPU reading on Gig Performer went to about 70%. I was like, okay, it's not going to work. So I tried to keep it under 35 if possible.
Yes.
And so essentially, I put that idea aside. But then I read about instance. Then I'll try, okay, let me try a different instance.
Mm-hmm.
And what it did was I loaded all the plugins, and then I realized that it was using another core. So it's using a separate core from the CPU. And with that, then all my processing on the effects instance was as I wanted to, and then my master bus was running absolutely fine with no issues, no latency, no crackling, no nothing. I was like, that's it.
Yes.
That's why I use the two instances.
Yes. I
And I
have
recommend anyone that wants to do this use multiple instances.
Yes. I have heard that this is profound for people who are running things that are very heavy. Somebody I was helping build a setup was having a similar issue with audio effects specifically. Was running
Yep.
probably 200 plus rack spaces of virtual instruments and
Right.
all that stuff with no issues at all. And then he wanted to put in, it was like 6 different audio effects plugins, and with those bypassed he was at like 23 or 24, and when he turned those on it was like 80. And so I was like,
Whoa.
okay, yeah, we moved them. By the way, they were resource intensive, for sure they were, but we moved them to a separate instance of Gig Performer, and it was like 15. And now his setup works beautiful. And he's actually using GP Relayer to handle the sending between instances, which is kind of another cool thing that's happening. But yeah, the instances are a big game changer, I think. It looks like you recreated.
Yep. Hello?
I
Can you
think
hear
we've
me?
lost
So
Brett's
sorry.
audio.
It's
Yeah.
There it is.
right outside the room. There are currently jackhammers. And so I've been muting and unmuting, and I think I forgot to unmute myself. So did you draw these in yourself, or did you employ the talents of Alistair Begg to get these perfectly made lines?
Well, Alistair definitely helped looking at his layout because his layout is always spot on. He goes to great lengths, even with the fonts
Yes.
of the pedals and amps he's trying to replicate.
Yes.
So yes, but so this was heavily inspired by his care of it.
Hmm.
But what you see is this. Essentially, what I have on my master bus, let me show this, is an F6, Waves F6, so the dynamic EQ just to control the harshness, right?
It's loading. Give it a second.
And oh, it's loading. Okay. Let me see if I can open all of the plugins.
I like the way you're thinking, JP.
Right.
That's that way when Zoom catches up, we'll be able to see it all at once. And I'm actually gonna, once they load, I'll
Okay.
switch to just.
Yeah, I'm trying, but
It's all good. The effects of live streaming on computers is it's a special thing. Well, while that's loading, the savvy tourist
Did it
wants
catch
to
up? No,
know if
not
you
yet.
use any channel processing. Well, we'll come back to that. It's gone. It was there for a moment, and then it came back. Well, do you use any channel processing on every
The channel
channel?
processing I use is all on the desk.
Gotcha.
All
Okay.
I'm processing is just the effects and the master bus. That's it. Everything else is done on the desk.
Okay.
For now.
We are talking, we have been talking over the last 6 months or so about trying to build a mixer system, like a PC-based, gig performer-based mixer, that will handle all of the channels and all of the sends that we need to be able to do the routing for this, so that we can use all of the nice plugins, similar to how a wave system would work. We're still working on that.
Gotcha.
And
Gotcha. Let us know when it's built. I'm very curious.
I think where I'm at the moment, if I'm going to be spending that much money, I'm just going to be jumping into Avid.
Sure.
Quite honestly.
Sure.
It's quite, it's getting pricey.
Oh, I see your plugins now. What are we looking at?
Is it good now?
Yes.
Right.
They're gone, but they did show up once, so we can maybe fix it on the back end of things. So what were we looking at?
What I'm using is the Waves. Yeah. Okay. Waves F6 is my first. It's a DAQ.
Mm-hmm.
And I only using to control the harshness. I mean, between 2 and 5, 6K, the area that sometimes, especially with brass section, all going to the master, it kind of build up.
Mm-hmm.
So the F6 is just there to control that harshness. And then it goes to an API 2500 emulation from Plugin Alliance, from Lindell Audio.
Okay.
Which is this one. Hoping that it shows.
I can see it again in the background a little bit.
Yeah.
Yep, I can see it now.
Oh, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
And with this, it's gone again. And with this one, I'm getting about probably a dB of compression. And then I'm using a parallel, which is an SSL, kind of SSL compressor to compress the in parallel of that signal. Mm-hmm. And then helps bringing all the low level signals up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Usually people steer away on live show situation, but that doesn't seem to upset, at least for our setup. Mm-hmm. Everything works nicely, no feedback.
Wow, okay.
See, this is it. That's my setup. Okay, for the master bus.
Wow. I love it.
Now let's see.
Oh, there it is. We're back now. Well, that's fantastic, man. So you guys have really built something that's quite specific, but very powerful. So I'm definitely curious to see how all of this evolves. So my question for you, which folks who are watching, last call for questions, but my question for you is, if you were going to recommend Gig Performer to somebody who is running front of house, what bit of advice would you give them to get them started on the right foot?
I would say find what you need, exactly the kind of sound you need to get from all the processing, and start building up from that. Mm-hmm. Gig Performer is very intuitive. It's very easy to understand all the routing, the layouts. But yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
About it.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like the work backwards approach seems to be the most common and profound answer. Well, guys, thank you so much. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say that the ability to work with multi-tracked audio taken from a specific desk from a specific show really helps. And if you've got your gain staging kind of set, you can build stuff at home quite easily. Um, and when you end up in your rehearsals, I would imagine that not 70% of the work is done, and then you just refine from there. That I love taking multi-track audio from shows, and love it when people are able to give me multi-track as well, because it just makes everything so much easier to build a starting point from,
Yep.
because you've got all the original sources and all of the right sources coming in at the right level, so they're hitting things at the right level, and you just build it away from the band at home.
Yep. Yeah.
Mm.
It gives you the ability to like do your homework more accurately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect way of putting it. I've always said that being a musician is like doing homework for a living. So it's exactly the same here.
Oh gosh.
Mm.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Dave, JP, thank you guys both for being here. This was awesome. Folks will be back next week with Igor Paspalj, and you guys, once you get your next iteration built, let's do it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
We-
We have capacity for another couple of shows. I've got another engineer working for us as well.
Okay.
JP is pretty much booked for all 4 nights a week for the year.
Yes.
It's incredible what we've been able to do with this thing.
Yes.
But I have a second engineer and a second identical system, and we're recruiting for him at the moment. We think he's got capacity for another couple of shows, and we want to do exactly the same thing with them.
Yes.
So
yes, and I guess in the description right now, if you want to know more, we've got your website, so folks can reach out to you through there for I don't know, for whatever it is. And where are you guys mostly working right now? What area of the UK are you in?
Well, we're based in the south,
Okay.
but we literally drive all over the UK to do our shows.
Okay.
It's genuinely exhausting, but
Yes.
you can't make a living as a musician on the number 9 bus route. We've got to take the show where we need to take it to be able to keep our income up.
Yes.
So we do end up all over the place.
Okay.
So it's not really location dependent as such.
Okay. Awesome. All right, folks. Did we miss anything? I don't think so.
I can talk about the meters if you want to, but that's fine.
Yes. Tell me about the meters.
All right. So when I'm mixing, I don't want to be opening plugins, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't want to be opening plugins to see if my compressor is reducing too much or gain reduction too much. And Gig Performer doesn't have a gain reduction meter, as far as I know.
Mm-hmm. I don't think so.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yet.
So what I ended up was using the meters, the usual meters you have, to display gain reduction.
Okay, what did you do?
So essentially, if you have a sound and you duplicate it, right, you have a copy of the sound.
Mm-hmm.
If you flip the polarity of one source, so I mean the waveform is essentially inverted, what you have is silence, right?
Right.
So if you change the volume of either the sound of the copy, what you get in the results is the difference between the levels of the two.
Okay.
So if I have a sound that's being compressed and the other sound is not compressed, and I send it to a meter, the resulting movement is the difference between the two sources. So the meter is actually showing me the amount of gain reduction.
Wow.
And that's what I have here. So this is the amount of then I
Approximation,
calibrate.
isn't it? It's
Sorry?
clever.
It's
an approximation.
And I use the tone, a basic sine wave to calibrate and see where the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 dBs of gain reduction applies. The same with the parallel compression.
Wow.
For the multiband was a bit odd because I had to multiply that with filters, and although it's not absolutely accurate, it's pretty close enough to get an idea where the amount of gain reduction I'm having from the F6 as well, which is each of these is one band, a different band from the F6.
Wow. This is like some
So
high-level technical
if in the
stuff going
future,
on.
yes. If in the future Gig Performer would like to implement gain reduction meters, so I don't have to program all of this all the time, I would really, really, really appreciate that.
David will be watching, so I'm sure we'll chat
Yes.
through it. Wow. So you
Nice.
just did some like super awesome like audio stuff to make that possible.
Yeah.
Some sound math or some sound science is perhaps more accurate.
Yeah, it's phase inversion
Yes.
and
Yes.
nulling and summing and the
I'm glad we didn't skip that. That was like the cherry on top of all of this stuff. That's really great. Well, friends, oops, did that wrong. Where'd JP go? There you are.
Right here.
Thank you for being with us. Folks, we will be back next
Thank you
week,
for having us.
same time, and hopefully we'll get you guys back on again soon. Enjoy your Thursday, friends, and we'll see you next time.